It was supposed to be a quiet night. No cameras, no screaming fans, no stage lights. Just Elvis Presley alone in his hotel room, staring at a phone he had already picked up and put down 3 times. Outside, the city kept breathing like nothing historic was about to happen, but inside that room, something fragile was unfolding. Because somewhere across the city, maybe just a few streets away, Marilyn Monroe was also awake, also restless, also wondering why the silence felt louder than applause. They were the 2 biggest icons on Earth. To the world, they seemed untouchable, but that night, both were painfully human. Elvis had been told Marilyn wanted to see him, not as a legend, not as a symbol, as a person. And for a brief moment, the distance between them wasn't measured in fame or fear. It was measured in minutes. Minutes he could have crossed. Minutes that would never come back. Elvis stood up. He put on his jacket. Then he stopped. Because for Elvis, moving forward was never simple. Every step toward Marilyn also meant stepping away from the version of himself the world expected. The Southern boy who respected boundaries. The man controlled by managers, schedules, and invisible rules. The son who never wanted to disappoint. And Marilyn? She wasn't waiting for a superstar. She was waiting for someone who might finally see her beyond the smile, beyond the blonde image that everyone else owned. She didn't know if Elvis would come. She only knew that if he didn't, something inside her would quietly close. This wasn't a misdate. It wasn't bad timing. It was a collision of fear, pressure, and destiny pulling in opposite directions. And what stopped Elvis that night wasn't distance. It wasn't lack of desire. It was something far heavier, something that would haunt both of them long after the night ended. Because sometimes, the most important moments in history don't happen on stage. They happen in silence. And once they pass, they never ask twice. To understand why this night mattered so much, you have to understand where Elvis and Marilyn were in their lives. By this point, fame wasn't a gift anymore. It was a cage. Elvis was surrounded at all times. Managers controlled his moves, friends filtered his calls, even his emotions were managed. Every decision had consequences, not just for him, but for an entire machine built around his name. Marilyn, on the other hand, was unraveling quietly. The world saw glamour. Inside, she felt invisible. Studios told her how to speak, men told her who to be, doctors told her how to sleep. And yet she kept searching for something real, someone real. Elvis represented that possibility. Not polished Hollywood, not scripted affection, just raw emotion wrapped in a human voice. This night wasn't about romance alone. It was about escape. For Marilyn, Elvis was a door out of loneliness. For Elvis, Marilyn was a mirror, showing him what happens when the world takes too much. Being close to her meant facing truths he had spent years avoiding, about control, about vulnerability, about how fame can hollow you out while everyone else calls you lucky. The stakes were invisible but massive. If Elvis went to her, he risked judgment, scandal, and losing the fragile balance keeping his career steady. If he didn't, he risked something deeper, regret, the kind that doesn't fade, the kind that replays itself late at night when the noise finally stops. And fate had narrowed the window. This wasn't a someday moment. Marilyn's life was already slipping into chaos. Elvis felt it, even if he couldn't explain why. Something was urging him forward, while something else held him back with equal force. History often changes in obvious ways, but sometimes destiny whispers once and waits to see if you listen. That night, Elvis was standing at the edge of a choice, and what he did next would echo far beyond the silence of that room. It was late, the kind of late where even cities seemed tired of pretending. The lights outside the hotel window blurred into soft halos, and Elvis Presley stood alone, listening to a silence that felt heavier than any crowd he had ever faced. He had sung to millions, moved hearts he would never meet, yet that night his hands trembled over something far smaller than a microphone, a telephone. It rested there like a challenge. One call, one decision, one moment that could never be repeated the same way twice. Somewhere in this same city, Marilyn Monroe was also awake, pacing between shadows, wrapped not in glamour but in unease. Neither of them knew it yet, but history was holding its breath. Elvis was used to pressure, but this was different. On stage, fear turned into electricity. Off stage, fear became a voice that asked dangerous questions. Who are you when no one is watching? What do you want when applause can't answer for you? He had been told Marilyn wanted to see him, not for headlines, not for a photograph, just to talk, just to exist for a moment with the world pressing in. The idea both pulled him forward and locked his feet to the floor. To the public, Elvis was confidence made flesh. The walk, the voice, the certainty. But in private, he was still the boy from Tupelo who had learned early that love could disappear and expectations could crush you if you disappointed the wrong people. Every move he made was watched, measured, filtered. His manager's warnings echoed in his head like a rehearsed sermon. Be careful, be clean, be controlled. One wrong step and the machine turns on you. Marilyn Monroe was not a safe step. She was the most watched woman on earth, wrapped in rumors, desire, and scandal whether she asked for it or not. Marilyn sat on the edge of her bed, heels kicked off, makeup half removed. Without the lights, without the cameras, she looked smaller somehow, like someone who had spent years holding a pose and was finally tired of standing. Fame had promised her freedom. Instead, it handed her rules. Smile this way, speak softer, be grateful. Men wanted her image, studios wanted her obedience. Very few wanted to know who she was when the door closed. Elvis felt different to her. He wasn't polished Hollywood. He wasn't pretending not to feel. His voice carried ache, not perfection. That night, she didn't want to be adored. She wanted to be understood. The cruel irony was that they were mirrors of each other in ways neither fully realized. Both came from nothing, both were turned into symbols. Both were trapped inside versions of themselves the world refused to let die. And both were standing at a quiet crossroads, wondering if connection was worth the cost. Elvis picked up the phone. He listened to the dial tone hum like a distant engine. This was the moment. Call her, go to her, step outside the carefully drawn lines. But with that step came a flood of consequences he could already see forming. Headlines, whispers, disappointment from the people who claimed to protect him.
And something deeper, something he rarely admitted even to himself. Fear of what might happen if he did go. Fear of seeing too much of himself in her loneliness. Fear of caring, when caring had always been dangerous. Marilyn glanced at the clock again. Time moved strangely that night, stretching and shrinking at once. She told herself she didn't care, that she was used to being disappointed, but her body betrayed her. Every sound outside made her look up. Every passing minute felt like a quiet verdict. She had reached out not because she was weak, but because she was tired of being strong alone. If Elvis came, it would mean something. Not forever, not promises, just proof that real connection was still possible in a world built on illusion. Elvis set the phone down. Not yet, he told himself. Just a moment. He walked to the window and stared at the street below. Somewhere down there was a path that led straight to her door. Cars passed, people laughed. Life continued, indifferent to the decision forming in his chest. He thought about his mother, about loyalty, about the rules drilled into him since his rise began. He thought about Marilyn's eyes in the photographs he'd seen, always smiling but never resting. And for the first time, the weight of his own fame felt unbearable. What stopped him wasn't lack of desire. It wasn't distance. It was the realization that this choice wasn't small. Going to Marilyn meant choosing himself over the structure that held his life together. It meant risking control in a world that punished vulnerability. And Elvis had learned, again and again, that vulnerability came with a price he wasn't sure he could pay. Minutes passed. Marilyn stood, then sat again. Hope thinned into something sharper. Not anger, something quieter. Acceptance mixed with a familiar ache. She had lived this moment before, in different forms. Men drawn to her image, then pulled back by fear. Elvis was different, she believed that. But difference did not always mean brave. When the clock moved forward once more, something invisible shifted. Not dramatically. No door slammed, no phone rang unanswered. Just a subtle closing, like a breath released too late. Elvis remained in his room. Marilyn remained alone. And the night, having waited long enough, moved on without them. Neither of them would ever forget that silence. Elvis would carry it as a question he never fully answered. Marilyn would carry it as one more proof that even the brightest connections can fade before they begin. History would never record this moment officially. No photograph, no contract, no witness. Just two people standing on opposite sides of a choice that never crossed the space between them. And long after the music stopped, long after the lights went out for good, that one night would remain suspended in time. Not as a love story that happened, but as one that almost did. Morning came without mercy. Sunlight slipped through the curtains of Elvis Presley's hotel room, landing on the same untouched jacket, the same silent phone. Nothing in the room showed what had almost happened, yet everything felt different. Elvis woke with a strange heaviness in his chest, the kind that doesn't come from exhaustion, but from knowing he stepped away from something important. The world expected him to rise, smile, perform, be Elvis, and he would, but something inside him had shifted overnight. He sat on the edge of the bed and replayed the night again and again, not in images, but in feelings. The pause before picking up the phone, the way his hand hovered, then retreated. He told himself he had done the responsible thing, the smart thing. That's what everyone around him would have said if they knew.
Yet responsibility felt hollow this morning. Fame protected him, but it also isolated him. And for the first time, he wondered whether the safety he clung to was slowly suffocating him. Across the city, Marilyn Monroe faced the morning differently. She didn't replay the night with dramatic heartbreak. There were no tears, no anger, just a dull understanding. She had learned not to expect too much from moments of hope. Still, something about this one lingered. Elvis had felt close, not physically but emotionally, close enough to matter. And when that closeness dissolved into silence, it confirmed a fear she carried quietly, that even when someone seemed to see her, the world would always pull them away. Marilyn prepared for her day like she always did. Makeup on, smile practiced, voice softened. To everyone else she looked fine, radiant even. But inside, another small door had closed. She didn't tell anyone about the invitation she had made. Some stories were too fragile to survive being spoken aloud. Elvis, meanwhile, was surrounded by people. Assistants, friends, voices filling the space that he wouldn't have to listen to his own thoughts. Plans were discussed, schedules tightened. Life moved forward with mechanical precision. Yet beneath it all, a question kept returning. What if? What if he had gone? What if one honest night could have changed something in both of them? The truth was uncomfortable. Elvis had always been taught to avoid risk outside the spotlight, to keep his personal life clean, predictable, manageable. Marilyn represented unpredictability, emotion, depth. She wasn't a distraction, she was a mirror reflecting the parts of himself he tried to ignore. And mirrors can be dangerous when you're not ready to see clearly. Marilyn felt a similar tension. She admired Elvis not because he was famous, but because his voice carried truth, pain, longing, things she recognized in herself. She wondered if he understood how close they had been to something real, or if, like so many others, he had stepped back because real connection demanded courage. Days passed, the night faded into the background noise of their lives, but it never disappeared. It became a quiet reference point. For Elvis, it showed him the cost of always choosing caution. For Marilyn, it reinforced the loneliness that came with being desired but not fully chosen. Neither of them spoke of it publicly. History would move on, filling pages with louder moments. But beneath the music in the movies, that unanswered night remained. Not as a dramatic tragedy, but something more human. A reminder that sometimes the moments that shape us most are the ones we never live. And both Elvis and Marilyn would carry that weight forward whether they wanted to or not. Time did what it always does after an unfinished moment. It moved forward without asking permission. For Elvis Presley, the days following that night became louder, busier, more crowded. Concerts, rehearsals, meetings, endless conversations that never touched the one thing sitting quietly inside him. On the surface, nothing was wrong. His career was rising like a controlled explosion. Every show sold out, every move made headlines. But privately, something had begun to haunt him.
Not Marilyn herself, but the version of himself he had been in that hotel room, the man who almost chose differently. Elvis noticed it first in small ways. Songs didn't land the same when he rehearsed them. Familiar lyrics suddenly felt heavier, like they were carrying meanings he hadn't heard before. When he sang about longing, it wasn't just performance anymore, it was memory. The memory of a night where he stood still instead of stepping forward. And with every performance, the question followed him like a shadow. Was this success worth the parts of himself he kept leaving behind? He tried to rationalize it. He told himself Marilyn was complicated, that her life was surrounded by chaos he didn't need. He reminded himself of the warnings, the rules, the careful structure built to protect him. Yet no explanation fully quieted the feeling that something unfinished was growing roots inside him. It wasn't regret in the dramatic sense. It was subtler. A low ache. The awareness that he had failed a private test no one else even knew existed. Marilyn Monroe, meanwhile, was unraveling in a way the public couldn't see. Work continued, but her heart wasn't in it. She smiled on cue, delivered her lines, posed for photographs that would circle the world. To everyone watching, she was still Marilyn, beautiful, luminous, desired. But inside, the loneliness deepened. The night with Elvis became a symbol, not of rejection, but of a pattern she knew too well. People were drawn to her light, but afraid of her darkness. And she was tired of being loved only in pieces. She thought about Elvis more than she expected, not obsessively, quietly. She wondered what stopped him, whether he had wanted to come and lost the nerve, or whether the world around him had tightened its grip at the wrong moment. She didn't blame him. Blame required energy she no longer had. But the silence confirmed something painful. Even the ones who seemed most human could still choose safety over connection. As weeks turned into months, fate began pulling its threads tighter. Elvis's inner circle grew more controlling. His image was polished, protected, preserved. Every risk was discouraged, every emotion filtered. The more famous he became, the less room there was for mistakes or honesty. And somewhere deep down, Elvis knew that night with Marilyn had been a rare chance to act without permission, a chance he didn't take.
Marilyn's world moved in the opposite direction. Control slipped. Doctors prescribed more pills. Studios demanded more obedience. Relationships came and went, none touching the emptiness she carried. She wasn't searching for a savior. She was searching for someone who wouldn't run when things became real. And each passing disappointment hardened her slightly, not into bitterness, but into resignation. What neither of them understood yet was that that single night had quietly altered their paths. For Elvis, it marked the beginning of a pattern, choosing containment over risk, survival over vulnerability. For Marilyn, it reinforced a belief she would struggle to escape, that closeness always came with an expiration date. They crossed the same world but moved in different emotional directions. Elvis buried himself in work, in routine, in the safety of structure. Marilyn drifted further into isolation, even when surrounded by people. And the tragedy was not that they never became lovers, it was that they never became witnesses to each other's truth. They were moments when Elvis almost reached out again, moments when he heard her name and felt a pull in his chest. But time has a way of turning hesitation into habit. The longer he waited, the harder it felt to break the silence. And Marilyn, proud in her vulnerability, never chased what wasn't freely offered. The night that almost happened began to transform into something more permanent. It became destiny shaped by absence, a reminder that choices don't need drama to be final. Sometimes they end quietly, and their consequences echo slowly over years. Elvis would later be remembered as a man surrounded by people yet deeply alone. Marilyn would be remembered as a woman adored by millions yet starved of real intimacy. Their stories would be told separately, endlessly analyzed, mythologized, but hidden beneath all of it was this shared moment of hesitation. And that hesitation mattered, because it showed how fear can shape lives as powerfully as action, how silence can redirect destiny, and how two people standing close to something real can still walk away carrying the same unanswered question: what if? That night did not destroy them, but it set them on paths where connection would always feel just out of reach. And as time marched on, the distance between who they were and who they might have been only grew wider. The silence had done its work. By the time the world moved fully into the next year, Elvis Presley had become more than a man. He was a system, a schedule, a product carefully protected from cracks. Every hour of his life was accounted for, and every emotion was expected to stay in its place. The applause grew louder, the crowds larger, the legend heavier. Yet behind closed doors, Elvis felt strangely hollow. The night he didn't go to Marilyn had settled into his bones, not as a memory, but as a pattern. Whenever life offered him something real and unpredictable, he stepped back. And each time he did, the distance between who he was on stage and who he was inside grew wider. Elvis surrounded himself with people, but connection stayed shallow. Laughter filled rooms, yet it rarely reached his chest. He was adored constantly, but rarely understood. Fame had taught him how to perform happiness, how to offer charm on demand. What it hadn't taught him was how to sit with discomfort, how to risk being seen without the safety net of applause. Marilyn had represented that risk, and because he turned away once, turning away again became easier. Marilyn Monroe's life moved in a more fragile direction. Her success continued, but stability did not. She felt herself slipping between identities, Hollywood's fantasy and her private reality. The pills became more frequent, not for pleasure but for survival. Sleep no longer came naturally. Silence scared her. And in her quiet moments, she returned to the same conclusion. She was surrounded by desire, but starved of safety. The night with Elvis returned to her in fragments, not as regret, but as clarity. It wasn't about him personally, it was about what he represented, a chance at connection without performance. When he didn't come, it reinforced the belief that even someone who felt genuine could still choose distance. And so Marilyn learned to lower her expectations, to protect herself by asking for less. Both of them were now trapped in opposite versions of the same prison. Elvis was locked inside control. Marilyn was locked inside chaos.
And the cruel symmetry was that each could have recognized themselves in the other, if they had allowed it. There were moments when their paths almost crossed again. Events, parties, whispers of encounters that never fully formed. Each time something intervened. Schedules, fear, pride. And with every missed opportunity, the emotional distance hardened into something permanent. Elvis began to feel the cost of constant restraint. He struggled with anxiety, with the sense that his life no longer belonged to him. He had everything he was supposed to want, yet peace escaped him. Marilyn felt the opposite, too much freedom without protection. She was exposed, vulnerable, and increasingly alone. What made this tragic was not that they failed to save each other. That was never their responsibility. It was that they failed to recognize how deeply they understood the same pain. Both were children of abandonment in different forms. Both were shaped by early loss. Both feared being left if they revealed too much. As time passed, the world continued celebrating their images, unaware of the quiet erosion happening beneath the surface. Elvis sang love songs that carried unspoken longing. Marilyn played roles that smiled while breaking apart inside. And the night that almost happened remained a silent reference point, a reminder of a choice made out of fear rather than truth.
This part of their story is not loud or dramatic. It is slow. It is human. It is the realization that distance does not always come from separation. Sometimes it comes from standing too close to something real and choosing not to reach out. And by now, both Elvis and Marilyn were living with the consequences, even if they never named them aloud. Time did not heal this story. It buried it deeper. By the early 1960s, Elvis Presley and Marilyn Monroe were still alive, still famous, still admired, but something essential in both of them was already slipping away. The world saw success. History would later see tragedy. But neither began loudly. They began quietly, the way all unresolved moments do, with a choice not taken, with a silence left unanswered. Elvis felt it more clearly as the years passed. The structure that once protected him now felt like a cage. His manager tightened control. His schedule grew merciless, and the freedom he once felt in music began to fade. He still sang about love, longing, and desire, but the songs no longer promised hope. They sounded like echoes. Elvis knew fame had saved him from poverty, but it had also stolen something fragile, the courage to choose vulnerability when it mattered most. The night with Marilyn had been a warning. He ignored it, and now the pattern was permanent. He began to fill the emptiness the only way he knew how, through excess. More food, more pills, more distractions. Anything to quiet the feeling that his life was being lived around him instead of by him. The tragedy was not that he lacked love. It was that he no longer trusted it. Every close connection felt dangerous. Every emotional risk felt like a threat to the fragile balance holding his world together. Marilyn Monroe's descent was more visible, but no less misunderstood. The public framed her struggles as weakness, as instability, but the truth was harsher. Marilyn had spent her entire life reaching for safety and finding none. Each disappointment taught her the same lesson: do not hope too much. The night Elvis didn't come became symbolic, not because she loved him, but because he represented the possibility that someone genuine might choose her fully. When he didn't, it confirmed the belief she could never quite shake, that she was always too much, or never enough. Doctors replaced understanding with prescriptions. Studios replaced compassion with demands. Relationships replaced intimacy with dependency. Marilyn did not collapse all at once. She faded slowly, piece by piece. And the loneliest part was that she knew it was happening. She wasn't naive. She was exhausted. They never spoke publicly about that night. There was no dramatic confrontation, no letter, no closure. That is what made it powerful. It lived on in absence, in the paths they took afterward, in the way Elvis avoided emotional risk, in the way Marilyn stopped expecting rescue. When Marilyn died, the world reacted with shock, but Elvis reacted with silence. Those close to him noticed the change. He withdrew further. The loss hit him not as heartbreak, but as finality. Whatever that night could have been, it was gone forever. And with it, the last version of himself that still believed in what if. Elvis would live on, but something in him closed permanently. His decline followed a familiar shape: pressure, isolation, self-medication. History remembers the ending as tragic, but the deeper tragedy began long before. It began when he learned that survival sometimes costs more than it saves. This is not a love story in the traditional sense. Elvis and Marilyn were not star-crossed lovers torn apart by fate. They were two deeply wounded people standing at the same emotional door, and both afraid to open it fully. Elvis was afraid of losing control. Marilyn was afraid of being left again. Fear won. And that is the final truth of this story. Not scandal, not romance. Fear. Fear disguised as responsibility. Fear disguised as caution. Fear disguised as strength. The night that stopped Elvis from reaching Marilyn was not stopped by distance, timing, or circumstance. It was stopped by everything they had learned to survive the world, and everything that survival took from them. History remembers their faces, their voices, their legends. But beneath all of it is a quiet lesson. Sometimes the moments that define us are not the ones we live through, but the ones we walk away from. And sometimes the cost of staying safe is losing the very thing that could have saved us. That night ended without a sound, but it never truly ended for either of them.